Taurus, and I'm the founder of the Emotional Clearinghouse. Now, I'm very excited about what's going to happen today because we are introducing a wonderful new series of conversations. Now, many of you have already met and are already familiar with my very dear friend and my wonderful colleague, Beth McDonald. Say hi, Beth. There we go. And maybe you saw one of the interviews or podcasts that we've already done. The most recent one we've been involved in is a series called Mental Health in the Time of COVID. And for those of you who are fans of that series, we are getting back to it. We have not abandoned it. So we don't want to create abandonment issues, do we, Beth? No, we're all about healing. So we will get back to mental health in the time of COVID. But today we're introducing a wonderful new series, and it's called Astrology as a Healing Guide. Specifically, the topic is the spirit of Taurus. Now, I'm sure you want to know, why are we introducing this and why now? And there's some very good reasons. So as a holistic family doctor for the last 35 years, as a chiropractor specifically, I was trained and taught that our bodies are self-regulating, self-healing organisms. And that the only way that we can get sick is if something is actually blocking our ability to regulate and self-heal. So as chiropractors, we were taught to do chiropractic adjustments to do what? To release blockages from the nervous system. We were also taught to do nutritional programs and lifestyle programs to clear blockages from the biochemistry of the body and the organ systems. And those of us that were really lucky, we were trained to do emotional clearing techniques, which could find and release stored emotional trauma from the nervous system. All of these things are meant to release blockages and allow your body to self-regulate and self-heal, which is what it already knows how to do. However, the deeper truth is that your healing is not about your doctor and about the techniques that your doctor knows. Your healing is about your own awareness, your own consciousness, what is going on in your body, in your life, you being aware of that. That's what leads you to take steps towards healing and to choose a practitioner. Healing is really an inside job. Now, I had a wonderful teacher. I've mentioned him before. I'll probably mention him a million times in my life for all the things he taught me. And he always said, this is Dr. Guignot. He said, Sobel, we do not heal our patients. We accompany them. And that's what this is about. So Beth knows that for years, we've both been in practice 30 plus years. And I've done a lot of research and a lot of exploring to discover what are the tools that I can give to my patients that will encourage them and help them develop that awareness and that consciousness. And when I met Beth over 30 years ago, and here was this wonderful woman working with individuals, with families, with businesses, with corporations, using her abilities as an astrologer, as a psychic, as a business consultant. And she and I started collaborating and working with people together. And I realized, astrology is one of those great, juicy, wonderful tools for people becoming self-aware and taking responsibility for themselves and understanding how they're being influenced by powers going on and forces going on in the universe. So I want to really let Beth jump in really quickly here because she's got so much to share with us today. But we talked the other day and we said, for those of you who are born under the sign of Taurus, welcome. And for those who are not, chances are you've got someone in your life who was, or that maybe there's someone in your life who you'd like to have them in your life and they're born under the sign of Taurus. And the other piece of this is to just have a deeper understanding of what's going on at this particular astrological time of year, how you might be influenced by it and what you can do. And as we go through this process, Beth and I will be going back and forth and talking specifically about how these astrological forces can be affecting our physical and emotional well-being. So Beth, I'm handing it over to you. And by the way, Beth and I have a little code. I'm going to raise my hand when I have something to say. We know that's fairly sophisticated. Hope you can handle it.
Hey, Zoom taught me that because I didn't get it in grade school. All the Zoom meetings,
And this is going to be number one or number two. This is going to be a handshake.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Sobel, thank you so much. And I want to thank you all for being here. I'm so grateful to be doing this. Sobel and I have kind of toyed with the idea of doing something like this since 2015. And one of the best things that's come out of COVID for us is we did it. We're doing it. So here we are. We decided to take a small segue into starting this new series because the transits right now are so intense, and because so much of it is focusing on the sign of Taurus. Now, Taurus is not the first sign of the zodiac. Technically, it's the second, and some of the Virgos out there may be a little uncomfortable with starting with the second one. But because of the transits, this is what we're going to do. Trust me, we'll get all the way through, and you Aries will get to you, and we'll make it worth your while for your patience. So mahalo for your cooperation. And with that said, again, thank you so much. And I kind of want to start at the beginning, because one of the things a client was asking me is like, why did you take up astrology? Why do you do this? And because I had this other thing going. I've been clairvoyant since I was a little kid. I was a business consultant since like 1988. And so I took it up as a lark because a lot of my girlfriends were doing it, but they were also healers, you know, psychotherapists and Reiki masters and different kinds of energy workers and whatnot. And they were using it they were studying it with the intention of being happier and more whole in their lives, but also being better able to help their clients, because astrology is so helpful and in so many different areas of your life. And so we're going to cover a lot of ground today. And like Sobel said, this is primarily designed for people with prominent Taurus in your own chart. But everyone has Taurus somewhere. And then also all of us love somebody, sometimes several somebodies with a lot of Taurus in their charts. And one of the things that I've found so much, primarily from my newsletters, I get people thanking me saying, oh my gosh, this helps me understand my husband so much better, or this helps me understand my sister, or I'm a better parent because of this. And so no, it's not just about you. There's a duality here. There's a dual purpose. You understand yourself better, and then you understand those around you better, and then you can be happier and healthier and more comfortable as you walk through your life on this planet. Especially now with COVID, it's like we're all in, yeah, we'll get to that. Okay, questions so far? Anything? Okay, good. Okay, good. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about history and evolution, because a lot of the people that I know and or work with get really confused because there's so many different kinds. There's, you know, astrology is super old. You know, when I first started dabbling in astrology, it was thought that it only went back to like the Neolithic age, about 7,000 BC. And it turns out it goes back a lot further than that. Just in 30 years of practicing, it's like now they think it goes back 25,000 years. And so there's that. And so even within the kind of astrology that I practice, which is the Western psychological astrology, there's several different subcategories and subsects. And so the thing I want to reiterate is that I'm only talking about the method that I practice. There are many more. And if you've gone and gotten a reading from someone, didn't resonate with the method, didn't resonate with it, it doesn't necessarily mean the practitioner was unskilled or that astrology is bunk. If what it means is you might not have been working with the right method. And I would encourage you to continue to explore. And I would encourage you to learn about the different kinds, especially for those of you who come genetically from a culture that has a very profound tradition in astrology, like the Hindu religion, the folks in India, the Hispanic culture, the Buddhist culture. A lot of cultures have a very, very specific astrological method, and sometimes you will resonate best with the kind that you descend from your blood root. Does that make sense? Everybody good so far?
It not only makes sense, but it goes right back to what we're talking about, which is being responsible for self-awareness and self-consciousness. So as a chiropractor, I know you're married to a chiropractor, how many different chiropractic techniques are out there? And I always say to my patients, look, I go to lots of different people. And I know, oh, right now I need this kind of an adjustment. Right now I need that kind of body work. And it's up to me to be aware of what's going on inside me and to say something either works for me or doesn't, resonates or doesn't. But I don't judge the technique.
No,
It's me. I'm making the choice. And that's what you're saying. And I'm really glad to hear that, because, as broad as it is, my God, there's so many different avenues.
Thank you for that. And one of the things that I see a lot, whether it's chiropractic or astrology or even psychotherapy, I see this a lot with psychotherapy. They don't put it out there on their shingle. They don't advertise what kind they practice for the most part. And so when you book a session, you have to ask. You have to ask questions, especially if it's your first time in with that particular person, and ask them to educate you about what they practice and why they practice. It's taking personal responsibility for your own healing path and healing process, and trusting that if you don't get the results you want right off the bat, you're not bad, you're not wrong, you haven't failed. It will serve you somehow. You might not recognize it right away, but ultimately it helps you to learn how to trust your gut, to trust your own inner guidance, your own inner wisdom, and know that you're okay and it's going to be okay. All is well. I know that kind of thing can sound like platitudes in the middle of COVID right now, but it's true. We've been walking this for 30 years and we know it's true. So yeah. All right. So yeah, I said that. Awesome. The kind I practice is Western psychological astrology, basically because it was designed by healers for healers. There just wasn't a better fit for me. I have indeed explored other methods, and they are valid. Some of them are more valid for different people, but I really love this because it takes the best of everything that came out of Western civilization. It started in the Fertile Crescent, the Babylonian region, and then everybody who got a hold of it modified it and expanded over thousands and thousands of years, all the way up to, Carl Jung in the 1930s. That's what really grabbed my headlines. He did some amazing research, and it just blew me away. He did some research, particularly with couples, again, relationships, and the roadmap he created for working with couples through that research holds true today. And I use it, I use it on a monthly basis with couples and that kind of thing. So that's huge. Within that branch, after Jung, there was a whole bunch of other really big names, and I want to just kind of shout them out for people who are beginning or who have their own kind of path for this. And what I like about this is that all of these people made their names before the internet, back when people were writing and buying books. And if you really want to become more well-versed in this, get off the internet and buy some books, because and as a Gemini, I'm going to say that because we love books and we spend a lot of time in them, but it's more accurate. And a lot of the newer people who are on the internet, who are making their living, not necessarily from astrology, but from selling ads on their website with Google, they're not the most reliable sources. And so the pioneers of modern Western psychological astrology are Liz Green, Howard Sasportas, Robert Hand, Stephen Forrest, Stephen Arroyo, Jeff Green, and the incomparable Richard Tarnas. And if you want more data on those people, call me, email me. Well, I'll get you connected. I'll show you where to find it. But these are books that I have in my library and that I use all the time. And so with that said, let's talk about Taurus. And we have a question about the sun and the moon and the rising sign, and I kind of want to blend that in.
Oh, good.
Everybody has Taurus somewhere. And so it's important to know when the sun moves over into a new sign once a month, it's important to take a minute, take a breath, and go peek at your chart and see where that is, because each house rules a different aspect of life. Like for me, I have Taurus in the first house, which is my identity. And so, you know, bringing beauty and harmony and balance and relational accord is all I am and all I do. You know, I'm not 100%, but, you know, I have my bad days. I do get into snits with people. I will admit that. But it's like knowing where the signs are is really important. Your sun sign is said to be your ego structure and your perception of your father and your relationship with your father, how your father influences you as you walk in the world. The rising sign is your id. It's your unbridled self. It's who you are left to your own devices if you're not paying attention to the confines and constructs of polite society. It's who, yeah, it's who you want to be more of the time, and that's a really important part to know. And then the moon is your heart and how you love, how you give and receive love, and so and Taurus is exalted. The moon is exalted in Taurus. If your moon is in Taurus, that's literally the best place it can be. And so loving is going to be easier for you. It's just natural, unless there's an affliction, unless it's got a bad aspect somewhere, touching something negative, but you're going to be kind of a natural mother. And what I see a lot is Taurus moons who didn't bear children are the most awesome aunties, the most awesome godmothers, the most awesome, you know, house sitters, babysitters, critter sitters. You know, they've got it going on. They know what they're doing, and sometimes in some Aboriginal cultures, it is believed that the godmother auntie relationship is far more important than the parental relationship, because you can impart the information, you can nourish and nurture in ways that the parent can't. You don't have to deal with that inevitable parental wound. And so there is something really sacred and special about those Taurus moon relationships. And so if you have a Taurus moon and you chose not to have children, know that you have an exalted role in your community, and don't be afraid to own it. Like step right in. Yeah. And yeah.
No, it's true. Yeah. I have my moon in Taurus. I never had children. That's a story in itself. But I remember when Rabbi Steve Cohen in Santa Barbara said to me, you know, you've always been a community mommy. And it was a huge acknowledgement, and it helped me put to rest the fact that I was having children. And that when I look at that richness in my life, you're right. And I always say that with kids, I can give them information and wisdom that their own mother can't give them, because I'm not their mother and I'm not a mother. So I give them the exact same information their own mother would, but they take it from me. So it's come to feel like a very valuable role and a very rich role. And that's why I've encouraged young people who are really uncertain about whether or not to bear children, really think about it. It's either way, if you want a relationship with children, you can have it, and it can be very rich. So and even better in a lot of ways, without the guilt, without the guilt. And I just have to say, over the years, I've watched you with your godchildren and your nieces and nephews and whatnot, and we've talked about this over the years, and there's something really special and magical about it. And that kind of leads me to segue into some other aspects of the birth chart and astrology in general that I wanted to talk about. In Western astrology, it's said that your birth chart, also known as your natal chart, is a map of your reasons for being here.
It's a map of why you chose to incarnate or reincarnate, depending on what you believe, or it's a map of why God sent you here. Again, depending on what you believe. It's your reasons for being here. And one of the things I love about the birth chart is we all have those days when things are just cloudy and unclear, and it's like, what the heck was I thinking? What am I supposed to be doing here? Always on those days, go back to your chart. Just go back to your chart and ground in to the assets and the life lessons that are described there, because it's a shortcut, especially for those of you with fire, a lot of fire in your charts and are always looking for the shortcuts. One of the things that Sobel and I love about astrology is it is the shortcut. It will show you the exit. It will show you how to get where you're trying to go faster. And so, your birth chart is said to be a map of your soul. It's said to be a map of your covenant with God, with yourself as a soul, and with all the souls in your soul tribe. So there's a lot of righteousness here, regardless of what your faith is. There's a lot of just rock solid anchoring strength by coming back to that. I get emotional talking about that because I was raised in faith, and as were you, different faiths, but we learn from each other. And so it's a really powerful tool to keep you connected to who you are as a soul, who your God is, or the organizing forces of your universe, and the souls that are the most important to you. And your birth chart is calculated by looking at where all the planets and constellations were at the moment you were born, because it's believed that as you drew your first breath, you imprinted all that data that is reflected in your chart. As above, so below, the saying goes. And so with that said, over the thousands of years, each sign has come to rule a vast realm of just crazy esoteric detail. And for those of you who have the slightest penchant towards Hermione Granger kind of skewing into books and being the smartest girl in the room, this is a rabbit hole you can spend a lifetime in. Trust me, I have. And so I wanted to look at some of those crazy esoteric details for the sign of Taurus. And then we'll take that and drill down into the actual healing parts. Chris, thank you. One of the things I love the most about Taurus, and I say this to my Taureans all the time, the constellation for Taurus is the bull. And it's not just the bull, it's anything bovine, cattle, bison, buffaloes, oxen, antelopes, they're herd animals. And so they are going to be, people with a lot of Taurus are going to care more about being part of a herd, part of a tribe, part of a group. They're not going to be quite so lone wolf, and they're going to be more invested in putting the time and energy in to make the herd work, to make the tribe work. They're less likely to skew selfish, narcissistic, that kind of thing. They're going to want to move together. They're going to want to get there together. There's the heaviness of the size of those animals provides, I think, translates to a greater ability to stay grounded on this planet. Now, for all humans, it can be hard to stay grounded because this is on some days a really weird place. It can be difficult, again, on the day-to-day to understand or to trust that just by staying on the path you mapped out for yourself, that you're going to get where you're trying to go. And Taureans have an easier, more natural ability to just stay grounded and to just keep trudging along, plodding along. They will always get there, especially Taurus suns, Taurus risings, man. They may not be fast, but they always get there. They have goals and they get there, and they may get frustrated with how long it takes, but they get there. And that energy, the Taurus sun, Taurus rising, especially the double Taurus, oh my God, the 1-2 Taurus sun and Taurus rising, they get there. They get there, and they don't give up. It's a fixed sign, fixed energy, doesn't give up. It's very tenacious. And so that, and that can be, I kind of want to throw it back to you here, because one of the challenges in helping people heal is they can give up. They can get frustrated. They can, what's the word for it? I'm asking for a word and they're giving me like 14. It's challenging. I get emotional about this too. It's challenging for people who have suffered a lot, especially in their early childhood, especially in their early lives, because they have more to unhook, especially if they come to healing later in life. That's part of why you want to get people in to see people like you early. You know, bring your kids in, bring your teenagers in, bring your college students in, you know, get them used to building a support team around them so that A, they don't have so much aggregate baggage to work through, and B, they understand the concept of process. You know, especially Americans, man, we don't do process. We have such a lottery mentality. It's like, well, I had a session, you know, seriously.
Exactly. So right before we started this this conversation, Beth and I were talking a bit about what happens when a very grounded, plotting Taurus gets ungrounded. What happens when they lose their way towards that goal, which, as you say, they are destined. That's their nature, is to make it toward that goal. And what I've seen in my practice is that when, and you just alluded to it, you said when people have a lot of early wounding and they've suffered early in their life, one of the things that can happen is something that is extremely traumatic to you in your perception of trauma, because
everybody's different.
Anything that happens in life that feels traumatic to you is going to be stored in your nervous system. It's not about other people looking in and saying, oh, I think that was traumatic. So when things happen in your life that feel traumatic or threatening to you, your body holds on to the memory of that trauma. And very often what ends up happening is that people come to conclusions at a very early age, and it's in the form of what we would call a mistaken or negative or limiting belief system. Like the really simple ones are, the world is a scary place. Things never change. I'm not worthy. I'll never be loved. All those kind of negative limiting belief systems. And when a Taurus who's plodding along and is used to being grounded and moving forward and to reaching a goal gets waylaid, very often it's because they've come up against one of those negative beliefs. And now all of their goals and affirmations and desires keep bouncing off of that. And it looks like what they say in out in the world, that you're sabotaging yourself. And Beth and I had a little bit of a laugh about this before we started.
Yeah.
I don't like that term self-sabotage, because it implies that somebody woke up in the morning and said, I think this is a good day to sabotage myself. Nobody sabotages themselves in a conscious way. What happens is you're out in the world, you're moving ahead, you're heading towards something, and boom, this old deep memory and negative belief gets triggered, and now all of a sudden you come crashing back to earth, and you try again, and you keep crashing and crashing and crashing, and that's so frustrating. And oftentimes when people go to therapy, even with a really, really skilled therapist, you can only get so far if your body is actually storing in your nervous system a negative limiting belief. And that's one of the reasons Beth and I like collaborating, is because the emotional clearing work that I do ties in very well with where you're seeing your people get stuck and frustrated and, you know, losing hope.
Oh, yeah. The thing that occurred to me as you were speaking is when I was first studying astrology, I studied with Jennifer Freed and Dorothy Boswell out of Pacifica, and who were also therapists, you know, and the thing they used to always talk about around emotional clearing was like, honey, your unconscious is way bigger than your conscious. You
Yes.
know, they say our conscious mind is only 10% of everything we are, everything we think, everything we do.
Right.
And that's why so many of the world's healing modalities are about, and religious and spiritual traditions are, at some point, they have some component that's about finding ways to dredge that stuff up. And that's, again, where, being a Gemini, I like them. And again, like anything you want to dabble in, if you're getting results, you just do it. You just do it. And then know that combining modalities, if you're impatient, or if you've got a lot of fire in your chart, or if you don't and you're just tired or unclear, then double down, you know,
Right.
double down and blast through. Yeah, especially with some of the transits we're coming up on, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. The eclipses and the retrogrades
Right.
are prime time to just gain ground.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
always
You
love
are.
it when my
Yeah.
students are seeing a therapist, because they'll go to therapy, come to me and say, "Oh, we're working on this issue," and then I could use the muscle testing to figure out where the unconscious is holding on to a pattern, clear it, and then send a little note back to the therapist saying, "This is what we found," and then
Right.
it goes back
Yeah.
and so
Notes.
wonderful collaboration. I love that.
Yeah, we're really good at notes. Those of you who work with us, we do notes. We do lots and lots of notes.
Here's your Post-it to take to your therapist.
Or I'm sending an email and I'm CCing both of you on a big day, on a really big day. Okay, so one of you, Tracy, thank you. When we were talking about goals, you had asked, what happens when you cannot see the goal? Now, this is fascinating. I'm so glad you asked this question. Yes, because this is where a lot of us struggle, especially if we're smart, and especially if we've been like working on things a lot of times. And I'm going to use an example from my life, because this happens to me a lot. And part of it has to do with my own conscious versus unconscious struggle. Part of this has to do with my own will, because I have an Aries rising and an exalted Mars. And so my will is a force of nature, which is part of why faith is so important to me. And here's how that works. I get an idea in my head and I want to do something, and I think that's the goal. And I get 4 miles down the road, and like the wall comes down, the earth splits like the San Andreas fault. And it's like, no, honey, you're not doing that. And it's like God shows up as the mama kitten, the mama cat. And she just kind of grabs me by the scruff of my neck and puts me over here and says, no, honey, you're going over here now. That was great, but your goal is not my goal. And so one of the things that is so tricky when you're committed to a spiritual path is that wedding of aligning my will with the will of the higher forces of the universe. And this is where it gets tricky. There are schools of thought like the quantum folks who are like, it's all just free will. It's all just free will. And that breaks down for me when you're sitting with someone who's dying of cancer, you know, or someone who's dying. It's like, you can't tell me they don't want to live bad enough. You know, you just can't. That stuff doesn't work all the time. It works some of the times, but not all the time. So you want to create a way forward, a spiritual way of being for yourself that has an integration of your will, and yet that Buddhist concept of surrendering, of surrender to win, man. Surrender to what is, and to allow yourself, as they say in the St. Francis of Assisi prayer, allow me to be an instrument of thy peace. And that's where Taurus really, really, really has a leg up, because Taurus ruled by Venus, Taurus rules aspects of peace. Yeah. Yeah. You go, girl. Yeah.
You're expressing in Buddhist terms about the surrender. What in terms of the language that I've been taught to use with
it's hard.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The idea of being okay with the way things are.
Yeah.
Okay, meaning emotionally neutral, not emotionally charged. So it doesn't
Yeah.
mean I like the way things are, or this is what I want, or this is the goal, but getting to that place where all the triggers are cleared so that you can be fully present in what is at the same time that you're moving towards the goal. And
Yeah.
that's what I work on people with a lot, is that idea of getting out of reactivity, out of that judgment, and so much of how we were raised in this culture that's all about doing and how, being productive and what you've accomplished. So it's it's not an easy place to get to be, I'm okay with where I am. I'm okay with, the way things are. And I recognize that I'm moving forward, but really getting out of that emotional charge. And that's what emotional clearing does. It removes the emotional charge and gets you to that place of what you're calling the surrender, what I'm calling
and acceptance or allowance. Like I studied a lot, a couple of years under Gary Douglas, and he used to really have a beef with the word surrender.
Yes.
It kept reminding him of warfare and what happens to the vanquished. And so for him, he was like, allowance. It is not surrender. It is allowance. And on a good day, it's absolute loving allowance.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So back to Tracy's question, what happens when you can't see the goal? Well, sometimes there's a lot of reasons for that. Sometimes it's like it hasn't been revealed yet. Sometimes your universe will only show you one step at a time. Again, sometimes you have to, sometimes when your will and your desire butts up against what's being shown and it's different, sometimes there's some healing that has to be done around that. Sometimes the goal is out of alignment. And again, I'm going to use an example from my own life. Before I was into astrology, I had tried to expand. I had taken some big risks and I had tried to expand my business in a very massive way, and it didn't go. Mm-hmm. And I was devastated. And for a while, I was really upset with myself. I was embarrassed. I was, because this is a small town, and I couldn't figure out where I had gone wrong. And then I figured out, I started learning astrology and looking at my chart and looking at like, but look at what happened then. By transit, Saturn, the planet of business, but also the planet of kind of being more disciplined, having a lesser footprint. It's not about expansion and getting bigger. It's about becoming more definitive and precise. Mm-hmm. At the exact time I was trying to expand like that, Saturn was going over my ascendant. My vision was not wrong. My timing was wrong. And so so then your prayer always with goals is like, help me to see, help me to hear, help me to accept and understand and embrace, and then give me the strength to do. Yeah. Does that make sense? Does that cover it?
It also goes back to back in the late 80s when I was starting my practice. And those were the days when we were all taking all these seminars and
learning. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
The affected people. I realized, oh my God, this is a conspiracy to make me do more. Right. And I woke up one morning and said, it's a conspiracy. They're trying to get me to do more. And I realized what I was fighting against was this idea of doing. And it was all about intent. It was all about intention, and everything was being powered by intention. And you could get a lot done that way. You could create all sorts that way, but you were overriding all these natural forces. And it took me years to get it that the idea of allowance really is the deeper truth, which is if you are fully present within yourself and you're not reactive, and you're not being triggered by old emotional trauma, then it's so much easier to just let things unfold and take the next step and the next step and the next step. And you see an opportunity and you go, oh, there's an opportunity behind that door. You go through it. And what you see on the other side is not great. So you back out and you look for the next door. But there's no judgment about it. There's no, oh my God, I made the wrong choice. No,
right.
You made a choice. And it wasn't the right alignment for you. So now go make another choice, but no judgment about it. And that's a very evolved place to be. And that's, to this day, I'm still working on that one, finding that place of pure allowance and letting things unfold, and being the Leo and having all the fire, not pushing. I've had to really deal with that one too, to not push and always look for the easy way.
Leo is the king. Well, and that brings me to something I want to reiterate. Taurus and Libra are both ruled by the planet Venus, the goddess of love, the goddess of peace, the goddess of harmony and balance. And so ultimately, where Taurus is in your natal chart is where you came here to learn how to have the most peace. And then where you came here to learn how to share with others how to have the most peace. Now we have a client, we have a question here about, as a healer, thank you, Kathy. As a healer, is there any way to optimize healing when the patient is a Taurus versus any other sign? Well, there's two things here. I would say you want to always remind them of their goals, because especially if it's a female, because in general, women do not get enough praise and appreciation and love for what they are doing, what they have done, who they are. There's so much pressure on women that there is not on men. And so especially if you're a woman working with another woman, and especially if you're a woman working with another woman who's a Taurus, be sure to reiterate a couple of things. One of them, that she's got goals and she's doing a really good job moving on them. And this is Earth. There's always going to be obstacles and setbacks. This is not the Oprah show, everybody gets a car planet. This is the planet where we have to do hard shit. And it's not easy. The other thing I will say about working with women, especially if there is damage to the lower body, the pelvis, the lower spine, root chakra, second chakra, stuff like that. Most women have endured at least one kind of sexual assault by the time they're 22, whether it's just inappropriate looking and catcalls, whether it's a handsy boss or a coach or date rape, bad sexual experiences as a young woman. You have to always assume that any woman you're working with has some sort of sexual trauma that is going to be a factor in what she's doing, especially if it's, again, and there are certain things with a trained eye you can see coming with someone, the way they carry themselves, the way they dress, where they go on a bad day, shutting down. If you've got someone who just shuts down a lot, there's likely to be a lot of sexual trauma there. And so if you're a healer working with women, a healer working with Taureans, or especially a woman Taurus, you want to just create a safe space and a safe container. And if they shut down, just encourage them to breathe, remind them that it's okay, and you're here and you're safe and you're here to help them, and it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I get emotional about this too, given the current political climate and the rights women are about to lose. Everything from abortion to birth control to voting rights to like a lot of things that our generation, Sobel, you and I grew up with, are going away and have gone away. And so just the whole trauma of what people have lived through is likely to get worse if we keep sliding more towards the Handmaid's Tale. It's just... Yeah. So anyway, a lot of women are really struggling right now. And so if you're a healer in the healing professions, be grounded yourself, take care of your own self-care so that you can be there for others. And if they're having a hard time, cut them whatever slack you can and try and validate their experience and praise them for what they're doing right. There's a quote, I believe it's from Alex Haley, the guy who wrote Roots, who has a very strong faith. And he always talks about, when dealing with other humans, find the good and praise it. Find the good and praise it. And just always call out, be the light in the room. Anyway, but especially when you're working as a healer, it's intense right now.
Can we talk? I know that was And it's really important. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the physical illness?
Oh, wait, that was the whole point. Yeah. Here we are. Okay. So each sign rules a part of the physical body. Now, Taurus primarily rules your neck and your throat. So that means all the bones, all the muscles, all the tissues, all the organs in and around that area. Your tonsils and adenoids, your thyroid, your vocal cords, larynx and windpipe, your cervical spine, and your throat chakra. And so if you're working with a Taurus, you want to pay particular attention to the physical and also the emotional issues of this area. You know, in certain kinds of chiropractic, the cervical spine rules aspects of anger and how anger can be repressed or affect your identity. Throat chakra issues are often like being shut down. And if you're shut down because your feminine side has been violated, your cervical spine and or your throat chakra are likely to give you trouble. So many women now have Hashimoto's with the stuff on the thyroids. I don't know one man with that. I know a lot of women. It's crazy. It's what it is. But I'll throw that over to you because you know more about this. Just know that if you're working with someone with a lot of Taurus, you want to look at that. If you have a lot of Taurus in your own chart, you want to take particular care of that area of your body.
Exactly. And Beth and I talked about this many times, which is that over the years of practice, I was very lucky that I got trained in emotional clearing right out of school. So I've been doing it for many, many years. And what I started noticing was that as I would be doing emotional clearing with people, I would see, oh, we keep coming up with, let's say, anger, resentment, frustration, depression. Those emotions kept coming up for people in different times of their lives. And very often they would be women, because women have been classically trained to not express anger.
Oh, yeah. Not express anything. Yeah.
Right. Not express anything, but specifically, oh, it's not okay for a woman to get angry. Well, you can be hurt, but not angry. So what I noticed was that a lot of the physical issues that I was dealing with, because being a holistic chiropractor, I was seeing their spine, their nutrition, their organ function, and their emotional issues all together. And I would say, wow, these people with all these gallbladder problems, gallstones, having gallbladders removed, have also got all of these held anger, resentment, and frustration, which are the emotions connected to the gallbladder meridian. Yeah. So I started seeing that connection, or people with all these, gut issues, physical gut issues, had the gut emotions. Yeah. So when we look at thyroid and throat, and we look at the emotional connection to that, it's the very same as the small intestine. So thyroid, adrenal, and small intestine are all linked. So the emotions that are typical are feeling lost, vulnerable, insecure, abandoned, deserted, what we call unrequited love, which is feeling that your love isn't being returned to you in an equal way, feeling muddled, emotional instability, having your emotions going all over the place, having mixed feelings about things, you can't figure things out, like struggling to understand. There's so many emotions that are connected to thyroid, adrenal, and small intestine. So again, as you say, women with, you see more women with thyroid issues than men, for sure. So again, I saw that correlation between the physical issues and the emotional issues. So that's another reason why emotional clearing is so powerful. Plus, I knew very early on in my practice, even though I didn't understand it, but I knew it was true. When you have intuition about something, and that over the years it reveals itself to you. I always used to say, I think that things go out of balance energetically first before they ever go out of balance physically. And then I'd say, I wonder what I meant by that, but it would come out of my mouth all the time. And over the years, I realized, yes, I think the stress and the emotional trauma is more of a primary cause of illness than anything. And now if you look at the statistics, they say 70 or 80% of every doctor's visit is connected to stress, and all of the chronic illnesses are connected to stress. Well, we can say stress, but I mean stress in an even more specific arena, which is stored emotional trauma. So it's now getting so well documented, what you and I have known for years. The science is there. What's that book? The body holds the body. body stores the, I can't remember it now. The body
It'll
stores
come to you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the science is there. It's very, very well documented
Right.
now. What we have really been observing and believing for many, many years. So we're going to talk a little bit more about, do we have time? I wonder how we're doing time.
Emotions. We're going to zip through this real quick. We got 10 minutes. I can talk fast.
Good.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to spend a minute on the emotional side of Taurus.
Yes.
The emotional side is that Taurus rules love. Taurus rules love, just straight up. And the biggest emotion when a Taurian is blocked, they either aren't feeling like they're getting enough love, nourishment, sustenance from their tribe or their family or their group of people or their client base or whatever, you know, and that gets back to those of you working with Taureans, you know, ask them, are you feeling the love? You know, are you, you know, and if you are, where are you feeling it, you know, and spend more time there. And if you're not, let's maybe look at that. Let's see if we can improve that at all. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And then one of the other pieces for Taurus is they can't always create love where they want to. And again, that gets back to Gary Douglas and the absolute loving allowance. It's like, okay, these folks, and I was sharing with a number of you guys about this recently. I just had an experience of this. We often have, especially as healers, the experience of not really fully being seen or recognized or appreciated by our family of origin or our marital family. And she cackles. Yeah. Oh, no, I don't know anything about that. But my husband's godmother died recently, and her funeral, memorial service, celebration of life was this rolling 3-day Mardi Gras thing over the weekend. It was massive. It just went on forever. It was so magical. Plus, it was such a set of holy days. It was really an opening. But we stood, my husband delivered the eulogy. We ended up tag teaming it because we both couldn't get through it without crying. And so he read part of it and cried, and then I would read and cry and whatnot. But we had the most magical feeling of feeling seen, heard, loved, appreciated, cherished, valued from his godmother's extended clan of 60 people, cousins, aunts, uncles, second cousins who came in from all over the country that he'd known from his whole life, you know? And so one of the most important things is to focus on what is and be grateful for what is. You don't always get it where you want it to come from, but it's always there somewhere. And so try and focus on that. You know, on a good day, Taurus is the ability to give and receive love generally, unconditionally, fiercely, deeply. But on a bad day, you can't see it. And so, again, if you're working with a Taurus or who's blocked, you want to try and get them unblocked and then focus on just cultivating more of the love where it exists. And one of the most helpful things I think you can do is to straight up, at some point when it's appropriate, just ask, what do you really appreciate the most about me as a friend or as a practitioner or as a daughter-in-law? I'm having one of those days where I can't see the forest for the trees, or I'm having one of those days where I really want to support you, but I'm not sure what you need the most or what would be the most helpful to you. And I want to make sure I'm not in my head and projecting. Right. And so just like, you know, practice taking a step back and going back to Friend School 101 and just check in.
And something, and I so appreciate that, because I have certain friends that I call and I go, could you just remind me who I am for a second?
Who I am. Yeah.
I just need that. Yeah. Most of the time, but every now and then, you're right, it does come up. But what we talked about, I can't remember if it was yesterday or today, about how the pandemic affected people's connection to the herd, to the family, and how it brought up feelings of losing that connection and all of the polarization that has gone on politically and emotionally, and how for Taurus, that's so critical to feel part of the herd. So they may be suffering even more so because of some of the that has come up over the last 2 years. So that's something to be aware of too for the Taurus.
Especially for Taurus, because this is one of the little esoteric kind of things. And I wrote about this in the newsletter for those of you who subscribe. Taurus not only rules love, it rules the values that we base that love on.
Right.
Yes, Taurus loves unconditionally, but it loves for reasons. We all love for reasons, and most of us aren't clear at all on what those are. And so COVID forced us to go back and to, pain and being locked down, pain and being not able to go anywhere, forces us to go deeper and to live deeper, which was really painful for all of us in the beginning. But I think it was the best thing for society as a whole, to have to learn how to be more present with who you are and how you are and what you value and why. Like a example from my practice that I see all the time is that like all of us will say we value honesty in relationships, but you got to go down deeper than that. How do we define honesty? I had a situation years ago where I knew a friend's boyfriend was cheating. And I was like, damn, if this was me, I would want a friend to tell me. A friend is not someone who would let him get away with that and let me be played the fool, but that's my value. Right. And I projected that onto my friend. And I was like, I saw him kissing her on State Street, and yeah. And she was mad at me. And I was like, well, you suspected, right? And she was like, yeah, but, beware the messenger, So I share that by way of illustrating. We all have to be really clear. It's not just the words, it's how we're defining the words. And with this upcoming Mercury retrograde that's going to be spending part of its time in Taurus, and these two eclipses that are, the first one was totally in Taurus, and this one coming up on the 15th is half in Taurus, half in Scorpio. This is a really good time to take a little time out and just go a little deeper. It'll be easier to get at what's really in there now. And if you need help, Sobel will help you. You could do a values session. That could be your next program for clearing around your values. That should be your next program. I don't know why we didn't think of that sooner. That's awesome.
Well, honey, I think we probably come to the end of our hour. We're pretty close, yeah? Oh, yeah. So what I'd like to say is a million thanks, Beth. I learned so much today about, I was really, really excited to hear about the historical aspect of it, and also a lot about Taurus. I have a deeper understanding, and I'm thankful for that. I'm really glad we have this to share with others. We will be, of course, making this available on YouTube and replay and all that. So Beth, will you let people know what you have to offer, what you'd like to let people know about how to connect with you?
Absolutely. Okay. One of the most important things I want you to know, because I know money is tight for a lot of folks right now, I have a series of guidebooks to help you through certain transits. And the one that's the most relevant right now is the Mercury retrograde guidebook. And there's beginners and there's an advanced. Beginners, you don't have to know your chart. The advanced, is better for you if you know your chart. And then there's also a discount if you buy a bunch of them, or if you buy some of them, and then you will also get a session with me. There's tiers of packages that you can get, but now is a good time to do that. And that's on my website, which is bethmcdonaldconsulting.com. Don't forget to put the consulting in, because bethmcdonald.com is a novelist who writes vampire books. And she will not help you. Yeah. But anywho, that's how you find me. I'm around if you want to contact me. My email address is thebusinesspsychic@gmail.com. You can email me through my website, all kinds of stuff. Just call me, we'll play.
Wonderful. And those of you who'd like to reach me, you can reach me through my website at emotionalclearinghouse.com. And on my website, there's an opportunity to join my membership program. It's a $47 a month membership program. And when you join, you get a free program either on, I have 4 programs that are available as a gift. One is on healthy, happy relationships, perfect for the Taurus friend in your life or for yourself. There's one on fear and anxiety, one on body image and weight, one on money and wealth. And that will be a gift for joining the Emotional Clearinghouse membership program. And then every month, a brand new half-hour, up-to-date emotional clearing program becomes available. And over time, you'll have access to all of the archives. You can come back to it as many times as you like. So again, thank you, Beth. I'm so appreciative. I look forward to the next one and to the next one and so on and so forth. Thanks to all of you for being here today. Feel free to share this with your friends and let them know that you can find, you can also find me on YouTube under Emotional Clearinghouse at YouTube. And Beth, is there any final thing you'd like to say for the
just focus on grounding and be at peace. You know, that's the priority for the next couple of weeks, is just focus on being at peace. If you have to unplug the phone, if you have to go AWOL for a while to just kind of get back into your body, you know, the people that love you will understand, you know, just be at peace, live long and prosper.
Thank you so much, dear.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye,